So just one question, if
Yes, sir, please.
so. So will you give us rights to share our desktop at the time when the presentation comes? Because
Yes.
right now I don't have access for that, I think.
No, sir, we'll give you the right, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Very good afternoon to all of you. Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, Mr. Pritoprata Sarkar, Head of Retirement and Managing Partner, Willis Towers Watson, Mr. Monu Fukan, CGM PFRDA, Ms. Barros Kamdin, Partner Deloitte Haskins and Sells LLP, Mr. Sitaram Kandi, Convener CII Pune HR, ER and Industry Academia Panel and Vice President HR Tata Motors, Mr. Roshan Kumar, Deputy Director and Head CII Pune, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to welcome you all at the webinar on National Pension Scheme for the Corporates. We are really honored to have with us Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA. Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for sparing time and joining with us and the CII membership from Pune. Ladies and gentlemen, to have a smooth and financially safe retirement, people invest in various instruments, starting from mutual funds, stocks, real estate, to NPS, EPF, and so many of them. These are some of the most common retirement instruments. Having said that, National Pension Scheme, the NPS, is considered one of the best investment tools for retirement planning in India. While all investment instruments have their own merits and demerits, NPS investments is largely focused on retirement for the investors. The main purpose of NPS is for the investors to get a pension during their retirement years, along with tax benefits every financial year thereafter. NPS is totally a voluntary contribution scheme and one can open an NPS account on one's own. The scheme, as I understand, offers investors choosing options to choose from 3 different types of investments: equity, corporate debt, and government bonds. Hence, the NPS investors can have exposure to different types of markets. Choosing an investment tool for retirement can be confusing because there are so many options and many a times people keep deliberating on what kind of retirement planning to do. However, not investing in the right instrument would be losing out on the potential returns of the investment after the retirement. Hence, it's better to understand these investment instruments properly to make an informed decision. With these words, I may now like to invite Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairperson of PFRDA, the Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority, to conduct the session as per the agenda. Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Garg, and good afternoon to everybody. Mr. Deepak Garg, Chairman, CII Zonal Council Pune, and Managing Director, SANI Industries, other senior officials from CII Pune Chapter, my co-panelists, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really happy to be here today and participating in this seminar on NPS and how to secure retirement benefits. It's a very important topic, and I'm very happy to tell that CII has joined hands with PFRDA to arrange these kind of sessions. And I believe this is the 5th such session, a series of sessions that we are conducting with other trade bodies also. I also thank my co-panelists, Mr. Ritobroto Sarkar, who is a very senior and accomplished actuary, who is doing a lot of work on retirement planning, and he's the managing partner of Willis Towers Watson, who will be talking about uh, WTW's experience as to how retirement benefits are getting secured today, what are the opinions of employees, employers, and all that. Madam Beros Kamdin, our taxation expert, will be talking about the tax implications if you come to NPS and what are the different kinds of benefits available there. And my own colleague, Chief General Manager of PFRDA, Mr. Monofukan, will be talking about the structure of NPS. So with that, we go into this session, and this is one most difficult topic when we talk about insurance of pensions, most difficult topic, because we find that there are certain things people do not want to talk about or discuss about, though these are very important in their future life. And one of such topics I find is pension. Talk to a 25-year-old about pension, they will immediately react, why pension, why now? I have another 35, 40 years to go. There was an interesting survey. I don't recall the people who conducted the survey. At one point of time, they asked people, younger generation, what is your idea about retirement and all that? A large number of people who participated in the survey said that we are not going to retire because maybe I'll change jobs and will be hopping from job to job, and ultimately we'll never retire. So it's like this the epic Mahabharata, the last part when all the Pandavas are going to the heaven, one by one, all of them fall behind because they had committed certain things in their life which did not entitle them to be in heaven. And finally, when Yudhishthira is entering the gate, the last question that is asked, what do you think is the most uh, this thing that actually keeps you engaged as to why this is happening? So he said that about everybody is dying, but still each individual feels, I am infallible, I'll continue forever. I believe nowadays, if you look at the pension, if that question is asked, I believe Yudhishthira will change that reply and by telling that everybody is retiring, but everybody feels that I'll continue to work till I breathe my last. So this is a situation which requires a lot of analysis and maybe awareness. And this awareness will really keep us going. And that's why these kind of sessions are very, very important. What is putting a challenge before us is that there are two factors actually. One is the longevity factor. Today, a person is living at the age of 60 for another 18 to 20 years. And unless we start securing that phase of retirement quite early, there is always a very serious chance of our outliving the corpus that we have set aside for retirement. We have seen normally people start thinking about retirement maybe at the last phase of their life, maybe late 40s or early 50s. And by the time they have lost almost 20, 25 years of their early working period. So that's why we are talking about NPS and retirement benefits in particular. Today, if you look at India, retirement benefits or pension plans, as it is most commonly called, these are in a very, very fragmented stage. And almost every scheme has some pension component attached to it. Even EPFO has a EPS, special provident fund schemes, also some attachment of pension with them. Then insurance companies provide superannuation funds. We provide NPS. And apart from that, maybe on the mutual fund schemes also, currently we see pension schemes coming out. Of course, they have a lock-in period of only 5 years. Beyond that, people can encash and go out of it. And if you total up all these things, what is the total pension assets today in India? Is just about little over 30 lakh crore. We made an assessment because all figures is not available up to date. So whatever was available, we totaled it up and we found it is just about 30 lakh crore. 30 lakh crore vis-a-vis the GDP of the country works out to hardly 13-14% of the GDP. So pension assets vis-a-vis GDP is just about 13-14%. Whereas in advanced countries, it has, in many cases, it has crossed 100%. So whatever kind of longevity that we are seeing in countries abroad, we are going to face it here with a time lag. Because whatever happens there, it happens in India also. Yes, there is a gap of time, maybe 15-20 years hence, we'll see a lot of people above the age of 80 going around. With retirement, what happens? Your regular income stops, but to a great extent, the lifestyle that you have built up over 35-40 years, that remains. The expenses remain. The mortality experience has improved, but the morbidity experience has not improved. Morbidity, again, is a terminology used in insurance, especially, which talks about the quality of life. Yes, people are living for longer, but what is happening is that they spend quite a lot on their medical expenses. And two things, which is a deadly combination, I feel, is the lower and lower interest rate. It combined with higher inflation rates. It's a totally actually a deadly combination, as I said, and it really creates a huge hole in the corpus that is already built up. That's why it is always better to start early, start in a very small way and contribute regularly to build up a corpus which you feel will be in your interest and you can lead a life of dignity post retirement. NPS as a product has a real value proposition for all retail customers, whether they join on their own, they join through their corporates. What are the value propositions like? Mr. Monofukan will be talking in detail, but to tell you in nutshell is that it is a relatively safe investment, which gives a competitive return, is tax efficient, cost-wise, possibly it is the lowest cost financial product available in the market in India today. And at the same time, it provides lots of flexibility. So it's a rare combination that you find in any other financial product, everything coming together. Maybe there are products which are giving good return, but the cost is high. Maybe it is not equally tax efficient. So if you want to find all these benefits combined in one product, I believe NPS will be the thing. We started way back in 2004 and started with central government employees, and thereafter we went into retail segment, we went into corporate segment in a big way. Today, other than government segment, we have about little over 30 lakh, 3 million customers. And out of that, 1.2 million, exactly 12 lakh belongs to corporates. Since today we are talking to, I believe, a lot of corporates will be joining. So just I'm trying to give a flavor as to how corporate subscribers are placed. As I said, 12 lakh corporate subscribers are there. How many corporates have registered with us? More than 9,100. The number looks good, but if you look at the number of registrations, that is 12 lakh, that shows the take-up rate or the proportion of the employees who have opted for NPS is pretty low. Maybe because the benefits are not properly explained to them, and they think that whatever else they are having, maybe a provident fund or a gratuity benefit or a leave encashment, will be enough to see them through. And these 12 lakh employees, they have around 72,000 crore of corpus built up currently. So if you take on an average, it is about a 6 lakh per person, which we think is very, very insignificant. But maybe this is the beginning. So they have maybe a long, long way to go. Because if we look at the demographic profile, though we do not have for corporates as such, but for retail customers, we have seen almost 40% of people who have joined and joined voluntarily, they are between the age of 18 to 35. So that gives us and shows us some flicker of hope. Maybe even younger people are also joining. And this is the group that we are going to target. So I believe the employers who are there, they have a very, very important role to play in guiding their employees, some kind of mentoring, guiding that is required, because a word from the employer goes a long way in convincing the employees, yes, this may be the right choice for me. UK in 2012 started a very, very interesting kind of a program where they said all the corporate employees, they will be auto-enrolled. Auto-enrollment means that if you don't give a choice, you are going to be enrolled in the pension scheme. So the option is for opting to stay out of the scheme. Option is not for joining. And this is explained through a theory which is known as nudge theory. It is not pushing or it is not compelling anybody to do something, but at the same time, you are guiding somebody to a path which you feel will be of importance for them in future. And their experience is, once people are opted in, obviously they opt in and join. Thereafter, not even 10% of people opt out. And they stay put in the scheme, and in the process, they build up a pension corpus. Their experiment has been very, very successful. But yes, the moment you put that kind of an auto enrollment scheme, that puts a lot of legal and regulatory burden maybe on the employers. But at the same time, I believe without putting auto enrollment also, the employers can give a nudge to to their own employees, and at the point of appointment, they can say and they can guide them that yes, retirement benefit scheme is in your interest only, and you start today, start now. They can start in a small way, and the flexibility allows that as they go up in their cadre, in their life, then with more cash flow, they can slowly increase their contributions. It's unlike many other schemes like insurance. You have a fixed premium. There are many other things where you have a fixed commitment. Here, your commitment is not fixed. Today, you deposit something, tomorrow, you are better off. You have higher money, higher liquidity in your hand. You immediately put higher amount and see that your purpose grows. So that way, I believe as we go along in this session, all the speakers will be telling about different aspects of the scheme. And that will, I believe, will give a better view of the NPS. Because it seems to be one scheme, but it has multiple benefits inbuilt. So many options. You can choose your fund manager, you can change your fund manager. If you don't like your fund manager, you change once a year. If you have chosen a particular kind of asset allocation, Mr. Garg has already told in detail about the asset allocations. if you wish to change your asset allocation, you change it twice a year so that you are always on the top of the market and see which kind of assets in the longer term will bring you the best kind of returns. All these benefits are available at a really negligible cost. So while again thanking CII and all the officials of CII present today, I take this opportunity in appealing to the employers, those who are present today, is that please look at the product NPS and please, if you require, engage with us, because this is possibly the only regulatory body which provides direct support to the employers and explaining to them how they can onboard their employees. There were situations, more than two, three situations where our team had gone, and not only the top management, they explained to the employee associations, employee unions, employee representatives as to why this is important for them. I believe no other regulatory body will go out like this and explain this, because we feel it is our duty to see that India is a pension society. So thank you so much, and thank you for allowing us this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was enlightening and setting the context, and for sure this will help us to navigate through the remaining panelists and understand the scheme better. So now I request Mr. Sarkar. Sarkar, can you hear?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
So, Mr. Sarkar, happy to have you with us, and over to you.
Thank you. I think I'll just share a few slides. So if someone can give me access. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's
Great.
visible now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir, Mr. Garg, uh, Mr. Mona Phokon, who's going to speak after me, Madam Kamdin, and other co-panelists. And a very good afternoon to all of you. It's always a great pleasure and a privilege to be speaking at an event like this, uh, and to share the virtual panel with such distinguished guests. I would like to thank the PFRDA and CII for giving me this opportunity. So today I plan to cover a couple of uh, survey findings that Willis Towers Watson has conducted over the last 2 years or so. And the first survey, as you can see, is called the Global Benefits Attitude Survey. And this pertains to how corporate sector employees are feeling about their retirement benefit savings. So this survey was conducted in 2019, where we interviewed several thousand employees across uh, various countries across the world on a wide variety of topics related to their current financial situation. And this included a substantial portion on their savings for retirement benefits. And I'll share some key highlights from that survey. The second survey was conducted last year, and this is our annual survey, which is the State of Retirement Survey. And this had respondents from about 150 private sector companies across various sectors in India. So we believe that both of these surveys taken together are really presenting two sides of the same coin, where we see how employees perceive retirement benefits, and then how and the employer, who's generally the sponsor of such benefits, are viewing the same instruments. So let's dive straight in. And before getting into the Indian context, we thought it'll be useful to provide some key themes, which are there globally, from the global survey that I talked about, from the employee based survey. The first theme that we see across most countries in the world is that there has been a definite erosion of retirement benefit provision, and this is primarily due to the fact that most of the traditional defined benefit plans have got converted into defined contribution plans, and that has led to some level of erosion in the overall provision when it comes to employer sponsored pension programs. Now, with this weakening of the provision and the prevalence of defined contribution plans, a lot of the onus has been transferred, and the risk has been transferred to the employees. And while regulators and in some cases employers are doing their bit in educating employees and also providing some platform for default investment strategies like the life cycle fund under the NPS, but we still feel that a lot needs to be done in the overall education of employees with respect to their pension provision. And finally, what we also see globally is that individuals who are approaching retirement age are servicing larger levels of debt now than that the previous generation would do at that age. And this means that their financial commitments may not permit them to retire in the traditional sense, and therefore many of them are actually looking to continue to work even beyond the regular retirement age, either with their current employer or with somebody else. So in terms of the findings from an India perspective, we found that 30% of employees are saying that they are not necessarily heading in the right direction in relation to their overall financial position. And this would include aspects relating to emergency funds, long-term savings, to meet their life goals, retirement savings, debt management, etc. And 30% are also saying that they are not heading in the right direction with respect to specifically the retirement benefits. We also see that about close to 60% of employees are saying that they are not saving enough for their retirement, which links in with our broader finding that individuals are struggling to be able to retire at the usual ages that their previous generations would be able to retire. However, the good news is that more than half of the individuals that were interviewed are saying that they have increased their allocation to retirement savings in the last 2 years. It's a different issue as to whether that saving is adequate or reasonable or not, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Uh, just continuing from the previous slide, we were able to divide the respondents into three non-overlapping categories, and roughly about 30% of employees are saying that they are falling behind. So essentially, that would mean that they are not only saving enough, but they are not even taking any steps to address that situation. So this is probably the most vulnerable group in the entire employee survey that we did. Only about 40% of employees have said that they are on track, and this would mean that they were doing enough to work towards a comfortable retirement. And these may be individuals who are benefiting from a lack of debt, or they may have already accumulated a fair amount of fixed assets, for example. And then the remaining 30% felt that while they were not on track, but they had recognized the problem and they were taking proactive steps towards increasing the retirement savings. So these may be the employees who would generally sort of uh, you know uh, look to enter into an NPS program or contribute voluntarily into um, into the provident fund, for example. So who are doing more than what they absolutely need to do, but nevertheless they still feel that they are a long way away in terms of their overall retirement goals. Now, on this slide, we actually put some numbers to bring this entire story into perspective. And we are relying on an old concept, which is called the net replacement ratio. In simple terms, what it means is that the net replacement ratio is the income that you would earn in the year after you retire as a percentage of the salary that you were earning in the year before you retire. So if somebody retired with a salary of 1 lakh rupees a month and is drawing a pension of 50,000 rupees, then the net replacement ratio is 50%. And globally, it is recognized that anything between 50 to 70% as a net replacement ratio is reasonable and appropriate. And this particular example actually looks at an individual who starts his or her career at the age of 23 with a basic salary of 25,000 rupees a month. And uh, and and if you look at the three columns out here, in the first column, the individual only has access to the statutory benefits, which is the provident fund and the gratuity. And if you convert these two lump sum benefits into an annuity stream at the point of retirement with some reasonable assumptions of salary growth and investment returns, then we find that that effectively translates to a net replacement ratio of only about 34%. Now you add a superannuation fund to that with a 15% of basic salary as contribution, then the 34% increases to 46%. And then if you have an NPS, a corporate NPS on top of that, then this percentage increases to 63%. Now, while this may be deemed to be a reasonable outcome, but we also need to remember a few caveats in this simple example. So one such caveat is that we assume that the employee is going to start very, very early at the age of 23. And we all know that at that age, which Chairman Sir was also talking about, how difficult it is to convince somebody so young to contribute anything more than the statutory benefits. We've also assumed that the basic salary is 50% of the overall gross salary, which many of you know is not the actual scenario in the market. Uh, and the market median tends to be about 30 to 35%, which might as well change once the labor codes come into effect. And finally, the outcome is also by no means guaranteed, right? So the employee still bears the investment risk. The employee bears the risk with respect to annuity prices. At the point at which he or she is going to retire, there could be inflation in the post-retirement ages, which obviously we know is going to happen. At this stage, we are assuming that it's all flat pension. So there are all of these aspects to consider. But hopefully this gives us a good idea into, what a typical retirement outcome would be considered to be appropriate. And what is very, very clear from this example is that the minimum statutory benefits are not going to be enough at all, for anybody to be able to retire comfortably. Now, let's now look at the other side of the equation, which is the employer side of the whole uh, situation here. And what are employers generally thinking when they design their benefits programs? And this is a short pulse survey that we conducted last year, and this was after the pandemic had hit us. So, as you can see, this slide tells us that NPS has now clearly emerged as the most popular corporate pension vehicle. And 5 years back when we used to do this annual survey, uh, superannuation plans would come out as the most prevalent pension program after the statutory programs, obviously. However, in the last couple of years, we've seen that the prevalence of companies that now have corporate NPS has gone up, and it's now sitting at about 51% as compared to 43% in 2019. Another 20% are in the process of implementing it. So it's very clear that corporates have accepted NPS to be the the obvious choice when it comes to the voluntary benefit over and above the statutory programs that you have to provide. And we would like to congratulate the PFRDA, the POPs, the CRAs, especially last year. And I talked about this, that the overall savings of employees have gone up, and they have been able to take the necessary measures to ensure that the enrollments could take place virtually. So that has actually driven quite a bit of interest into NPS. And given that a lot of employees are working from home, when we do some of these employee sessions, we are seeing a general increase in the participation in these sessions. Because earlier we used to do face-to-face sessions, so the participations generally used to be pretty poor. But now people are attending these sessions, and hopefully this can translate into better take-up rates. Uh, what we've also seen is that, and this is what Chairman Sir was also talking about, is that while the corporates are coming on board, but when it comes to the overall take-up rate, it is not necessarily increasing at the rate at which we would like it to increase. And the average take-up rate in the industry as a whole is somewhere about 11%. And it's not really gone up much from the last couple of years. We feel that some of the uncertainty with respect to the budget related announcements on the taxation associated with retirement benefits, could be contributing to some of the high earners taking a slightly cautious view as to whether they want to contribute or enter into NPS. But at the same time, we also need to ensure that given that in most cases NPS is provided as a voluntary benefit, and it is carved out of the overall cost to company package of the employee, the employer has to help the employee understand the value proposition of this program, and that will hopefully uh, help the employees make an informed choice. And this is probably one area that we are also appealing to the employers through these forums, that they need to come out and do more communication sessions for their employees. While some employers are providing flexibility with respect to the level of contributions that can be provided as far as choice is concerned, so many allow employees to choose that level of contribution. Some are providing some sort of incentive in terms of picking up the first year cost of the POP, etc. But still, it is not probably good enough. And we all know that nobody wants to see a reduction in the overall take-home salary, and that is probably where the employers have to put in a little bit of more financial incentive to encourage participation. Uh, we also see that when it comes to superannuation funds, the legacy funds, some have already provided the option of porting the superannuation balances into NPS. About a third of companies that we interviewed were saying that they are in progress, and they are allowing employees to port the superannuation balances across to NPS. But still, there are about 60% companies that are not yet providing that alternative, which sort of gives us an impression that many companies are thinking that all three programs, which is Provident Fund, Superannuation, and NPS, can coexist, and perhaps they should coexist. And this relates to the net replacement ratio example that we gave, that if you have all three, you have a better chance of having a more comfortable retirement. Finally, just very quickly on some regulatory changes, and I know Madam Kamden is going to talk about the tax-related changes. But what we also saw that this recent development on the aggregate contribution of 7.5 lakhs, that has put a little bit of doubt on some employees' minds. But employers are not taking any steps with respect to picking up any of the additional taxation. So it's sort of the entire tax burden is effectively falling on the employee. Only a few employers have said that they might restructure their salaries or revisit their NPS plan design to provide that flexibility. Otherwise, it's pretty much status quo as far as the overall design is concerned. And finally, a quick mention of the labor codes and in particular the code on social security, which, as you know, got passed in the parliament in 2020. It's yet to be made effective, but it's very likely it would be made effective in the next few months. And there appear to be a pretty significant impact with respect to a couple of areas. One is the definition of wage, which, as you know, has been harmonized across all the various acts and codes now, and which would essentially mean that all social security contributions and benefits will be linked to in most cases, a higher salary base as compared to the basic salary that employees are currently getting these benefits on. There are still some gray areas with respect to the interpretation of some of the components of the wage, but it's quite clear that the gratuity benefit, for example, is likely to go up because the wage that will be used for these calculations is going to be higher than the basic salary. If employers end up increasing their basic salary as a result of this change, then it could so happen that the provident fund contributions can also go up, and therefore the net take-home salary can potentially come down because of the CTC concept in India. But overall, I think it's a very positive development as far as retirement savings are concerned, and it should also hopefully discourage companies to have creative salary structures. So they'll probably try to stay away from keeping the basic salary very low, and hopefully it'll lead to an increase in the overall wage when it comes to social security contributions, which would have a knock-on impact on the NPS and other voluntary contributions as well. So with that, I'll probably stop here and thank you once again, and look forward to your questions during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Gandhi sir, you're on mute.
With a lot of questions and queries once we open up for questions from the participants. So now I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Kon. Thank you. Yeah, nice meeting you, sir. So hand it over to you. Mr. Kon is the Chief General Manager for PFRDA. Over to you, Mr. Kon.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. I'll just share my screen. In fact, I'll just jump into the product features as such. So I hope my screen is visible right now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just go into the features of the scheme. I'll just rush into some few slides and tell about how beneficial or what features the scheme has and how it can be adopted by the corporates for the employees. So just to start with the main benefits or the features of NPS in a snapshot is that the first thing that we like to highlight is that the pension account opened under NPS is portable across employments, and the number remains constant because what has happened is that people shift jobs And earlier they used to have the change the number or the employer or they have to open a new account. In NPS, it is not as such. Once the pension account has been opened by an individual, it remains throughout his entire working life, the same number. And a person cannot have two accounts in under NPS. So what we see is that if a person changes jobs between employer, the account number, the pension account only gets tagged to the another employer. It can be from government to private, within the private also, that can be done. And one more good thing is that somebody wants to do his own activity on his own. He doesn't want to on his own self. Then also the number remains the same. It is not essential to have an employer also to open an account. A self-employed person can also have the same number and continue with the pension account. So this is one of the uniqueness that I'd like to highlight, that once the account has been opened, it is committed towards pension. Contributions can flow from the employer also, and it can be maintained without an employer also. The next point I'd like to highlight is that it is one of the lowest cost pension product, not in India alone, it is across the globe also. The total cost of maintaining the account over a period of 30-35 years is only 0.2%. So this low cost helps in accumulating a higher corpus because the cost does not impact your accumulation or eats away your contributions. So another highlight of this is that the system offers a lot of flexibility to the subscriber or the individual to choose his own pension fund and how the contributions will be allocated to different asset classes. We have 3 asset classes: equity, corporate bond, and government securities. So a person can actively choose between this. And I have go in detail in the later part of the slides regarding the choices that a person can exercise in respect of the contributions that he would like to be invested in the way he wants it according to his risk appetite. Returns. Yes, the scheme or the fund managers have been able to generate returns which are comparable to competing products, or we have said that we have a track record of almost 13 years right now. And this record of 12 years shows that the scheme has been able to deliver double-digit returns over the period of time. And regarding tax, it is very efficient in the sense that a lot of benefits has been given by the government towards contributions. When a person contributes towards the account, a lot of benefits are there. The accumulations are also tax-free. And while withdrawing the money, there are also certain tax benefits to the subscriber. And the contributions also, a lot of benefits to the individual who has opened an account and to the employer also, if the employer contributes. I think this details regarding the tax benefit will be taken up by my co-speaker, Madam Behroz Kamdin. She is a tax expert. I think we'll listen to her after my session is over. And regarding transparency and online access, I just like to highlight that every transactions in the system that the person does, like opening the account or maybe changing any processes or the contributions that is making, it can be tracked at any point of time, at what stage it is. And you can view your account also, how much corpus you have, what is the value, all those things. So we say that it is accessible and all the transactions are recorded in the system and it can be viewed anytime by the subscriber. And over and above all this, the entire system is being regulated by us, that's PFRDA, which is the regulatory authority. And we register all the intermediaries or the entities that function within the system. We give them licenses, we call them registration of certificates, and we monitor the activities on a continuous basis so that they perform in tandem and to the satisfaction of the subscribers. So when we talk about a pension account, we have said that it is a permanent retirement account number that we generate from the system. That is the nomenclature that we have given. And we have categorized this account as an mandatory, which is the tier 1, and tier 2 is an optional account. If somebody wants to open an optional account along with this pension account, he has an option. But when we talk about the NPS as a pension account, we are talking about the tier 1 account in a system, and which has all the tax benefits. There are certain restrictions on withdrawal. We allow only partial withdrawals during the accumulation phase. And the minimum amount required to open that account is only 500 and yearly contribution is only 1,000. But on the other hand, we have not kept any limit on the number of contributions or the amount of contributions. even if a person wants to contribute daily, he can contribute in the system. It's the flexibility is built into such, and any amount can be contributed to his pension account. So there are no restrictions as such that he should contribute monthly. This is the fixed amount, nothing like that. So according to his cash positions or the funds that he has, he can do it. When you open a pension account, we also offer another additional account which can be activated at the choice of the subscriber. And to activate that account, it requires only 1,000 rupees and minimum contribution is 250 rupees. The only benefit of it is that it is freely withdrawable. It's more of an investment account. A person can put money today, withdraw it tomorrow. So this is what the flexibility of this account is. And it doesn't have any tax benefits into it. The capital gains would be taxed as per his marginal rate of the tax slab that the subscriber is there. And here also there is no limit on the number of contributions or in the amount of contributions. But we have a special category of Tier 2 tax saver for the central government employees, wherein if the amount is locked in for 3 years, the subscriber, the government employee get a benefit of under ATC. So the next phase of comes into how to join this account. So I have arranged the slides in such a way that first is joining the scheme, entry, then the accumulation and the choices that we have, and then the exit part, how to go out of the scheme or when to the scheme gets closed. So joining formalities are there. A form has to be filled up, photograph has to be given, and an address proof has to be given. That is the KYC. And we say that a person aged between 18 to 70 years, any Indian citizen can join the scheme. He can join online also through Aadhaar authentication, which is paperless, and e-sign can be done. And he can submit the form also to one of our points of presence on the distribution channels. So any person who is, any citizen who is aged between 18 to 70 years can join the scheme. And he can be a resident, non-resident, and an overseas citizen also. Next comes, after the account has been opened with a minimum contribution of 500 rupees, the contributions can flow either from the subscriber himself alone or only from the employer also. So the subscriber or the individual need not contribute also, the employer can contribute to his account. Such an arrangement is also there. Or we have another option that both of them can contribute. And the proportion of contribution by the employer and employer is also flexible. Any proportions can be fixed upon, equal, unequal, anything that the employment terms provide or the arrangement that the employer and the employee can have. So once money flows into the account, the funds flows or the contributions flows to a fund manager, which is called as a pension fund, and they invest those funds as per the choice that is between the instruments of investments that are there, which are as per the investment guidelines. In the market, they purchase the securities and then they declare a net asset value of the scheme at the end of the day. After the net asset value has been declared, the record keeper or the central record keeping agency, that the entity that we have registered to maintain all the personal records or the account details, what it does is that the contributions are divided by the net asset value and units are allocated to the pension account. So a subscriber in his pension account will see reflect or the balances of the units that has been allocated for under different schemes of the fund manager or as per the choice. So as and when the contribution flows in, the contributions gets unitized or converted into units forms and it's being credited to the subscriber's account or then in the pension account, and the value of those will be varying on a daily basis as per the NAV declared by the scheme. So as and when the contributions comes, units are allocated and the value of the units will be reflecting on the net asset value declared by the fund manager. So that would be the corpus growing over a period of time along with the returns being generated to it. So the next phase is about the maturity and the exit. We say that the scheme matures at the age of 60 or in the age of superannuation. The superannuation age may be different, 58, 62 or 55, anywhere what the employment terms provide. And in that case of a normal maturity or an exit, we say that 60% of the corpus that has been outstanding in the pension account will be paid in cash or as a lump sum, and 40% will be transferred to an annuity service provider of the choice. That means a person has to buy an annuity scheme from an insurance company empaneled with us to derive a pension, monthly pension from that amount. And if the corpus is less than or equal to 5 lakhs, we say that the entire amount will be paid in cash as a lump sum to the subscriber. He not by an annuity. If it's a it's not a normal exit. We call it as a premature exit. Premature exit will apply only after 10 years or before, if it's not before 60. So if a person has opened before 50 years, we say that no, you have to wait till another 10 years. If it's a joint person after 51, we say that okay, it's 60 years is the normal exit, then it's a 9 years the lock-in period. So in such a scenario, if the person doesn't want to continue after 10 years, we say that okay, since the corpus was meant for pension, 80% of the corpus has to be utilized for purchasing an annuity, only 20% will be paid as a lump sum. And if the corpus is less than 2.5 lakhs, the entire corpus can be taken in cash by the subscriber. And in case of unfortunate death of the subscriber, the entire corpus outstanding to the pension account is being paid to the nominee in cash. The NVT service provider, as I told you, these are insurance companies empaneled with us, leading insurance companies. And right now we have 14 of them, and they offer different products. Each insurance company offers different kinds of annuity plans, but on a broad spectrum, there are around 7 broad plans. The most popular being a return of a purchase price. Whatever the money is being handed over to the insurance company gets returned back to the nominee upon the subscriber's death. But during that period, the insurance company pays you the annuity or the pension on a regular basis as determined. So the subscriber has the choice of selecting any one of them, and after selecting any one of them, he can go into their plans and then select any one of them that suits his requirements. The pension can be only up to him till he's alive, or he can say that okay, once 50% can flow to my spouse, or 100% can flow to the spouse, and then thereafter the purchase price has to be returned to the nominees. So that is one of the most popular, and wherein the rates are also one of the lowest among all the plans that is being offered by the insurance companies. And next, when I talk about choices, yes, the first choice is regarding the record keeper. We have 3 record keepers. The service standards are same. There are slightly a cost differential between them. So the first choice is about the record keeper. Once that choice has been made, this choice has to be made through the point of presence of the distribution channel itself. And after this choice, the next choice comes about the fund manager. We have 7 fund managers right now, and only one has to be selected. And this choice also can be changed once in a year. So once the fund manager has been selected, the next is that how the contributions or the subscribers' contributions will be allocated among the asset classes that we offer. There are 4 asset classes, and we say that it can be done actively. That means the individual can choose what proportion of his money should go to equity, corporate bond, or government securities. It can be 100% also of the entire contribution in corporate bonds and government securities. But in the other 2 asset classes, equity, we say that the maximum limit is 75%. We don't allow. 25% has to be allocated to the other securities, corporate bond, government securities, alternate assets. Alternate assets also one of the most riskiest perspective that is there. So we allow only 5% exposure to the contributions or to the corpus. So this choice also can be changed twice in a year. If a person doesn't want to make actively the choice between what it should be proportion, we have another option of auto choice, wherein these are all called life cycle funds or auto choice, wherein the proportion between the 3 asset classes, equity, corporate bonds, and government securities, are predetermined. So the first life cycle is LC 75, life cycle 75, which is also can be termed as an aggressive life cycle fund, wherein the equity exposure is 75%, corporate bond is 10%, and government security is 15%. And at the last end, we have LC 25, wherein it is the conservative one with equity exposure at 25, and we have a moderate life cycle when the equity exposure is 50%. So these are predetermined allocation of the contribution between the 3 asset classes, and it remains constant till the age of 35. Once a person enters the 36, or he has on his 36th birthday, what happens is that the proportion of equity allocation reduces. In an aggressive, it will reduce by 4%. In a moderate, it will reduce by 2%. And in the conservative one, it will reduce by 1%. And that whatever the reduction has happened in equity, the debt proportion goes up. So by the age of 50, what happens in an aggressive fund? The equity exposure is 20%. In an aggressive LC 75. In a moderate, we have around 15%. And in the last one, conservative, we have an equity exposure of 5% at the age of 50. And it remains constant till age of 60. So this proportion will be going on, continuing till 35 years, the one that I'm showing on the slide. Goes on reducing from 36 years to 50 years. And from 50 years, it remains constant at the lowest equity exposure that the life cycle funds allows. And this choice also can be changed twice in a year. As I said, between the active choices, the choices can be changed between aggressive to moderate, moderate to, or to from a conservative to an aggressive. Or you can actively choose also. Say that, okay, I don't want auto choice, I'll go in for active. That also can be done. So this choice of changing the allocation is allowed twice in a year. Returns, as I've told you, that we have been able to deliver competitive returns in comparison to other competing products. So equity over a period of 12 years has delivered almost around 13%. And corporate bonds around 9.2%, 9.92%. Government security is 9.5%. Central government security is again 9.92. We have a track record of the 13 years, and state government scheme these 9.81. The only difference between the central and between this government schemes, the central and the state, is that it's a composite scheme. Basically, these two schemes. When in equity exposure is only 15% maximum, and corporate bond is around 30, 32%, 35%, and government security is around 50%. So within this combination of 15% equity, 35% corporate bonds, and 50% government securities, the track record of 13 years is 9.92%. Coming back to what the regulator, as a regulator, we manage the number of subscribers and the corpus. We manage around 4.5 crore subscribers, of which 3 crores, 3.5 crores is mostly a scheme which has been floated, Atal Pension Yojana and Swavalamban, the NPS Lite, which are pension schemes floated by the government, issued by them, but administered by us, wherein the number of subscribers are the highest. And in government, say state and central, we have around 75 lakhs plus 75 lakhs 40,000 number of subscribers. And in the voluntary segment, that is corporates and individuals joining the scheme voluntarily, we have around 30 lakhs plus subscribers, 30 lakhs 20,000 subscribers. 12 lakhs in the corporate segment and 18 lakhs 20,000 in the voluntary segment. The total corpus contributed by all this, all the subscribers is around 6 lakhs 39,000 crores. Government itself contributes around 5 lakh 20,000 crores. In the voluntary segment, the corporate 71,000 crores and 25,000 crores by all the voluntary individuals. So around 97,000 crores in the voluntary segment. And in the government sponsored schemes, around 22,000 crores. So when we talk about transparency, as I told you, you can track your transactions. So I was talking about you can access your account, the pension account, the subscriber can access through a web login, and we also through a mobile app also. So the mobile app is also available on the Android and the iOS. So a subscriber, after logging into his account, can do transactions, call for statements of account. He can change his personal details. He can put withdrawal request also. And he can contribute also to this from this account after doing a web login or through the mobile app. So all transactions can be done through the digital mode, online mode, 24/7. Lastly, I just this is my last slide, and just like to highlight that we have established a grievance redressal mechanism, and if any subscriber has any grievances in the system that can be highlighted in the system, he can lodge it. We have a regulation dedicated to it, and in that regulation we have fixed the timelines for resolutions, around 30 days for the intermediary to resolve it or the entity to resolve it against which it is there. And we have an escalation matrix also. So we have a system to receive the grievances through a centralized grievance redressal mechanism that is online, or it can be given to a mail also. It can be given in hard copy letters also. Once that has been lodged, so what happens is that it is being, the system takes care of it, and then it is redirected to the intermediary or the entity concerned to resolve it within a period of 30 days. And within that time frame, the resolution will be there provided, And if it's not satisfied with the resolution, there's an escalation matrix. So the next level of escalation is the trust again. So after that also, we have an escalation matrix to ombudsman. We have an appointed ombudsman from the regulator side. And after that also, the authority is there. And even if the subscriber is not satisfied with the resolution provided by the authority, he has a platform or a securities appellate tribunal to appeal against that means the resolution that has been provided. So we don't have any such cases as on date that has been escalated beyond us, beyond the regulator. So thank you, and we'll be open for questions at the end of the session. Any questions that we'll be having from the participants. Thank you. Over to you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mono. It was very enriching. I'm sure we will get back with question answers. To all the participants, we have sufficient time for question answers at the end. So may I request you all to start typing your questions, and if you're directing your questions to any particular panelist, you can always direct or give a generic question. We'll come back to you with the questions at the end of the session. So now I turn on to Ms. Kamdin, who is the partner for Deloitte Askin and Sells LLP. Madam, we are very eager to hear to you and happy to have you with us as an esteemed panelist. Without taking much time, over to you for hearing your inputs on NPS and especially on taxation and implications.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sitaraman. Thank you, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, for giving us this opportunity to discuss on tax implications. And thank you, Mr. Garg and CII for giving this opportunity to discuss on NPS. And before we start discussing the tax implications, I would just like to share my experience on pension. And generally, if you come from a family where you have people who have worked in government organizations and in army, central government, you're aware of pension and then you value that pension. So therefore, you understand the importance of pension. And still, though I was from a family where my mother got family pension, and it was so critical at that point of time that we got the family pension because we were really hard on money. Knowing that pension is a very good product, I myself had not taken an NPS, and I've been speaking on the sessions for so long and I had not taken NPS. It was only during this lockdown when the sessions were going on, my younger son said, Mama, you are the one who doesn't have pension. My husband is from the army and he's got pension. My sister is from a bank and she's got pension. And saying you're the only one in the family who doesn't have pension. What happens post-retirement? So you better start taking an NPS. You're discussing this and the product seems to be very good. He has got a little background from finance. He's from economics. He's got a finance background and he said, you should be investing because the returns are quite good. It was a nudge that came from my son that I actually opened the account. And he told me, I don't think I'm going to be joining a government. So you please open another account for myself. He's 22 years old. So actually I opened another pension account for my son also. And I asked my eldest son saying, do you want to open it? And he said, no, I will join an organization which will have pension. So you don't worry about me. But the thing was that in today's time, it's critical that you should have something for your retirement and it should be there. Another thing which I can share with you is that when I started working at the age of 21 itself, after qualifying from CA, my organization had superannuation fund. So we did have a pension fund. And there was a condition that you have to work for 10 years to be eligible for it. Every year, the employer is to contribute some percentage. I think 10% of your salary is to go to the pension account. And I left the organization after completing 8 years of service because I took a sabbatical. My husband was in the army, so I joined him in the army. I took a sabbatical and I did not get that pension amount. I did not get a return of whatever contribution was made, and it was lapsed because I didn't complete 10 years of service. And compared to that, if you look at NPS, and that's what Mono mentioned, the first point was portability. I think it's very important. Every employee should realize that this NPS account goes along with him wherever he goes. Whether he's working or not working, the account stays with me. So that is so very important. That is the most important benefit of it, that you don't lose the contributions which have been made by your ex-employers because of movement in the term employment which is there. So I think that's very critical from an NPS account. And everyone wants to save. So how do you save, whether it's mutual fund, whether it's shares, whether it's debt secure, whether it's fixed deposit? NPS also is one of the saving, and it has a lot of benefits to it. The returns are good. You can manage your fund. If you can't manage your fund, you have government securities. I think that's the essential, very good benefits which this NPS gives. You can invest in government securities and get a return of 9%. I mean, the fixed deposit also now is very risky. We've seen what's happening with banks. They don't give such a good return. And here you've got an NPS product, which gives you government security and gives you a return of 9%. So those who can take risk can get a higher return of 12% plus. And those who don't want to take risk can also get a return of 9%, which I think is very good. And government securities is the most safest for us. So I think from that perspective, if you look at it, you do have benefits on investing in NPS. And I think Rito, Mr. Bandyopadhyay, Mono, all have spoken about it. And we've got live examples where we really need pension post-retirement. I mean, people who think that I keep working throughout will soon realize that you need to have pension post that thing. So on the tax incentives of investment in NPS. Oh, Mono, thank you so much. Would you be able to share this? Thank you. So what we'll cover is we'll cover the tax incentives of investment NPS, and there was a change in law which happened in Finance Act 2020. So we will discuss the Finance Act 2020 a little later. So when we look at any investment that we do, we look at 3 stages or 4 stages of an investment. When you put in the money, the money that you earn on that investment, and when you withdraw. All 3 stages are very important from a tax perspective, and tax is important. See, it's a cost. Whatever returns you get from investment, you have to see net of tax benefit. If you look at a gross benefit, it will always look very rosy, but you have to see your tax, and it depends on each individual. Some individuals could be in the lower bracket, some could be in the higher bracket of tax. So it's very essential to see individual wise what is your tax amount and what is my net of tax return, which I'm going to get by making investment. Now, when we look at retirement planning, there's also one more thing which comes in, is the employer contribution. Employer contribution, when the employers make a contribution, would that be allowed as deduction for the employer? Would that get taxed for the employee? That is also very essential to be seen. Employees' contribution, will I get a deduction? So our government has been very good. Earlier, we didn't have social security benefits. Even now, we don't have in some sectors. So government has tried to incentivize savings and long-term savings by saying that you'll get a tax benefit out of it. Just by saving, I'm going to save my tax also. So that is something which every person looks at to say, how do I save tax? So employees' contribution, whether it will be allowed as a deduction. Annual accretion which happens on that investment over the years, will it be taxable or will it be tax-free? And when I withdraw the amount, do I have to pay tax then, or do I get a tax-free? So these are the 4 stages that I always look at when we look at retirement planning from a tax perspective. Next, please. Thanks, Mono. So now we come to the NPS. Investing in NPS. So when we look at the individual contribution, and this is a very good scheme of NPS. See, earlier, if you look at the superannuation fund schemes or pension funds, which are their private pension fund schemes, it was always the employer-employee concept which was there. If you're an employee, you can contribute to a pension fund. But here is an NPS where without being an employee, you can contribute to it. Or even being an employee, you can contribute to it. So that's something which is very unique to NPS. So individuals, when you contribute as an individual, if not an employee, up to 20% of the gross total income is allowed as a deduction. And if I'm an employee, then up to 10% of your salary plus dearness allowance is allowed as a deduction under Section 80CCD. But this whole thing is capped under the overall limit of 1,50,000. So 80C is, everyone would be aware as employees, you have provident fund, public provident fund, insurance, everything else which comes into it. Plus your 80CCC, 80CCD, all of those contributions together cannot exceed 1,50,000. However, for NPS, they've given an additional benefit exclusively for NPS, which is 50,000 rupees. So even if you exhausted the entire limit of 1,50,000, if you put in additionally 50,000 NPS, you still get a benefit of tax. And if you look at it, if you're in the highest tax bracket, 34% will be your tax savings immediately. So that is a tax saving that you're getting. Now, net of tax return, if you really calculate net of tax return by taking the tax into effect, I mean, it will be much higher than whatever Mono has been showing till now. So around 17,000, you get tax benefit immediately by putting in 50,000. If you're in the highest slab bracket, even if you're in the lower one, you still will get a benefit. What the government has now come out with, that there are two sort of schemes that are there of taxation. One is the normal rate of taxation, which is there applicable based on all your deductions that you claim. And the second is the lower rate of taxation, where you don't claim any deductions, even from your salary, or these ATCC, CCDs and all that. You don't claim any deductions and you come under a lower rate of tax, which is under section 115 BAC. What we saw was that in most cases that lower rate of tax is beneficial only in those circumstances where an employee is not able to save at all, doesn't claim much deductions at all, whether it's salary, whether it's all of these deductions. Only there it becomes beneficial. Otherwise, it is not beneficial. Otherwise, normal rate of tax itself is beneficial. And if you have the ability to save, and you all will have the ability to save, it is mindset. You need to save. So once you start saving, you will get the deduction for it. Now we come to employer's contribution. Employer's contribution will be allowed as a deduction for the employer, of course. When the employer contributes, whether it's taxable for the employee. And here there is a very peculiar thing for NPS. Employer's contribution is fully taxable as salary. So whatever the employer contributes, the full amount is taxable as salary. However, the full amount can get a deduction by ATCCD2 to the extent of 10% of basic salary and durance allowance in case of normal employees, and central government employees up to 14%. So in that sense, if the employer is contributing up to 10% of salary and durance allowance, then the full contribution of employer is not taxable. It gets taxed in the first place and then you get a full deduction. And that deduction will be available even if you're opting for a lower rate of tax. So if the employee opts for a lower rate of tax, still the employer's contribution is fully deductible. What they have now added in the Finance Act 2020 was that they sort of clubbed the employer's contribution to three funds: the Provident Fund, the Superannuation Fund, and the NPS. And they have said that all three contributions, if it exceeds 7,50,000, the excess over that will become taxable. And that's what we'll discuss later once we start on the Finance Act. But this is a change which the government has done now. In many cases, what we saw based on some statistics which is available at that point of time, we realized that it's a very small percentage of employees as compared to the entire employee workforce that really gets impacted, because normally the contribution in excess of 7,50,000 is very few employees. And even when we saw with a few of our clients also, it was marginal. The number of workforce that you have, it might be like top 100 or top 50. In that sense, it was being affected. Annual accretion to NPS. The annual accretion to NPS is not taxable, except to the extent that it applies to the excess over that like 50,000 on the employer's contribution. Employee's contribution, individual contribution, whatever you earn, annual accretion is not taxable. Employer's contribution, whatever exceeds the 7,50,000, on that excess amount, whatever is paid is taxable. Now we'll discuss that also as to how you need to do the booking. Withdrawal from the fund on maturity. Mono already mentioned that you can 60% you can withdraw on maturity, and 40% mandatorily you have to take an annuity policy. So whatever 60% you receive on maturity is exempt from tax. So you can then put that amount in other investments and earn income. And only the balance 40% where you need to take an annuity policy, that also is exempt from tax. But the annuities that you receive month on month after taking the annuity policy will be taxable. Depending on what sort of annuity policies you take, there are different types of annuity policies. You could also get a return on annuity policy also, return of principal. So in that sense, whatever you getting that amount is going to be tax-free. And you keep getting the annuities which are going to be taxable. And 60% whatever you get is not taxable. Partial withdrawal from the fund. Partial withdrawals are also allowed from the fund in case of exigencies and medical expenses and all of that. Here the Act says that up to 25% of the employee's contribution, whatever you withdraw, will not be taxable. So anything above 25% of the employee's contribution if you withdraw, then that amount can be taxable. The question arises that it's an individual like me who is not an employee and I have contributed. If I withdraw for certain reasons, then that full amount is taxable because the words used is employee. Maybe the intent was not to only cover employee. Maybe the intent was to cover all investors in the fund, and therefore individuals also should get covered. But the way the wording is section worded is, it's employee, and therefore there's a risk. Unless they amend this section, if an individual withdraws partially during the term of the NPS, that amount could be fully taxable. Contribution tier 2 account by central government employees, Mono did mention that tier 2 account, if you look at it, is like a normal mutual fund account, but it's giving you good returns. It's giving you at low cost. So why not have a tier 2 account along with tier 1 account? And we've opened it. I mean, from a practical perspective, commercial perspective, it makes sense. It's a normal mutual fund account, except for central government employees. If you look at it, they get a deduction for contribution to tier 2 also under section 80C. But there are conditions. It should be held for 3-year period. And this is also within the overall limit of 1,50,000. So there's no additional contribution that you get, additional deduction that you get for the contribution. It's within the overall limits. But otherwise, the tier 2 account is like a normal mutual fund account that you have. Yeah, next slide. Thanks. Now, the Finance Act 2020. If you look at this Finance Act 2020, prior to a situation, any contribution by an employer to Provident Fund was not taxable because it used to be within the limit of 12%. Anything excess of 12% would be taxable under that Part 4, Schedule 4, Part A of the Income Tax Act. But everyone used to keep it within that limit itself, so nothing was taxable for employers and PF. Employers' contribution to superannuation fund in excess of 1,50,000 rupees used to be taxable. So you used to get a benefit of 1,50,000 rupees. Employers' contribution to NPS was always taxable, but you got a full deduction for it. Now the Finance Act has amended this whole thing, and they said that you aggregate the contribution of all three, and if it exceeds 7,50,000, then that excess is taxable. In between, somewhere suddenly they've gone and changed this thing. Then they also put another clause 7A, which said that annual accretion, whatever you earn on these three funds, Provident Fund, Superannuation Fund, and the NPS, whatever is earned during the year on this excess amount, which is more than 7,50,000, that excess will become taxable. So there were a lot of questions and doubts in the minds of people to say, how is this excess going to be contributed? How will you allocate which is the part of 7,50,000 and which is not a part of 7,50,000? What will be the rate which has to be applied? There are a lot of questions in it, and therefore they have very clearly had mentioned in the Act itself that the computation will be as prescribed. So then they came out with the rule. So Rule 3B was issued, and this came into effect from 1st April 2021. And there they have given the methodology as to how do you work out the annual accretion which is going to be taxable. What they have said, the taxable perquisite, TP is the taxable perquisite, is equal to PC. PC is the contribution that you make during the year. So whatever contributions that you made during the year, the principal contribution that you make during the year, in excess of 7,50,000, you divide by 2. Divide by 2 is, I think, mainly to iron out if you're contributing something in the beginning as in a year as compared to the end of the year, it will even out. So the principal contributions that you make to all three funds, and these are only employer contribution. This is not for employee contribution. So you have to look at the employer contribution. Whatever is made to all three funds for the year, you aggregate it and you divide by 2 into R. R is the rate of return. This is the interest, what they are going to look at. The accretion, whatever is the annual accretion. We'll come to R. Now, R is something which has become a little complicated because when I'm deducting tax at source, if they had prescribed a rate, say 8%, 9%, or 10%, it would have been easy for me when I'm withholding tax during the year. But now what they have done is they have said R has to be computed. Now, how do you compute R? R is equal to I upon FABG. I is basically your income that has accrued during the current previous year. So during this year itself, April 21 to March 22, during this year, whatever the income I'm going to accrue, that divide by the average of the opening and closing balances in this funds. So the accrual, basically it is income which is going to be accrued during this year, divide by the opening and closing balances, the total opening and closing balances, which is there to the credit of these three funds, and that divide by 2. So it's an average. Opening plus closing divide by 2. And that's how they've done. Now it's for the current year. So any employer who's going to be withholding tax doesn't know what the closing balance is going to be. So there's going to be some estimation that he has to take. And he'll have to keep changing it during the year. Salary withholding tax, you can keep changing during the year. But this is an exercise which has to be done. I think they could have amended this. It's anyway only a perquisite, like a motor car, like any other perquisite, house rent. They could have just given one figure, which would have been much more simpler. but they have been trying to go towards the actual income. Now, the question which arises here is that in case of PF, we know it's interest and we can compute it. In case of superannuation fund, also a rate of income is given and it can be applied. So we know what the income accrued during the year can be. But in case of NPS, we don't get an accrual, we get an NAV valuation on opening and closing. Now, what is the accrual? Should I take the difference between the closing NAV minus the opening NAV as my accrual during the year and then divide by the balances? The way the formula has been given, you should be doing that. The question arises if there's a loss, assuming today, okay, the markets have been doing so well in the pandemic, everything has been rising, and therefore my NAVs have changed and it's given me a positive return. What if there is a negative return? Do I reduce it? The way the formula is worded, it says aggregate income. If I just read the formula, I should reduce it. So maybe I think CBDT should come back with some clarification on this as to how do I do calculations in case of NPS. But the way it stands today, this is how you need to work it out. If you go to next slides are basically just illustrative and as to how the calculation is done. This is only for example buys. The first year 2021, because it was only and the excess interest would come in the next year. Therefore, in the first year, we've just taken the principal components and there's no interest taxable perquisite for 17.278. So we've taken and the second illustration is for the current year to say, okay, if there is a perquisite amount, how do I compute the interest component? And we've taken accrual for all three, because you should take the accrual for all three, otherwise you will have nothing in the numerator and you'll have a higher denominator, which is not correct. As the formula stands today, I think you'll have to take it, unless they come out with some clarification. And then you also have to apply this rate of return on the past perquisite valuations. So whatever the past excess which is there, plus the past perquisite, that also you have to apply this rate of return. The R which is there has to be applied. So that's it from us. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer it. Thank you. Over to you, Mrs. Sitaraman.
Thank you, Amdin. Let's open it up for questions and see if there are any questions. Else, I had a few questions on behalf of the participants. So we have a few minutes left and see if we can clear some of the doubts. Yeah. So the first question is, what are the different annuity options available?
Mr. Kandi, I'm taking this question. I'm Bandyopadhyay.
Sure. Yeah.
So there are a host of annuity options available. Basically, it varies between two extremes. One extreme is we call it life annuity without return of any money. So that means I give a corpus and the annuity starts, and thereafter on the death of either the annuitant, nothing is coming back to the family. So that is known as a annuity option with life annuity and no return of corpus. But interestingly, here in India, we have seen most of the people, they opt for life annuity with return of corpus because they feel in our absence, we must give something to our family. In between these two extremes, what happens, the annuity rates varies. As all of us, we can understand, the first option without return of corpus is definitely less costly. So that way, it will give you annuity which is almost 20-25% higher than if it is with a return of corpus. But that is the choice like. And in between also, there are many other options like after the annuitant dies, the same amount of corpus, the same amount of annuity is given to the spouse. And after the death of the spouse, the amount goes back to the legal heir. Or there can be a life annuity without return of corpus, but the annuity will be given for a certain period. It can be 5 years certain, it can be 10 years certain, it can go up to even 20 years certain also. In that case, what happens in between also, if the person dies, the annuity continues for the family for the remaining uh, period, which was taken as a certain period. So there are many options, but as I said, that most of the people, they choose the annuity where the return of corpus is there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Supratim. I know many of the questions were already covered in the session, but just at the cost of giving more clarity to the points, maybe some of the questions are repetitive. Mr. Sarkar, you said still there are 30% people who are not into the bracket or not in the asking of this NPS as an option or a pension as an option. So why do you think they don't look at this, and what can we do to bring them also into the fold of pension? As Kamdin said, that she's been talking about this every day in, day out, but till the time her son brought up this, she didn't realize that she doesn't have a pension. So I think we have to encourage every son to go and talk about it, but what we should do for others to come into the fold.
Absolutely. I think when you look at prevalence from a market perspective, I think there are a lot of positives that I mentioned, that companies have uh, looked at NPS to be their second sort of vehicle now. So clearly that option is available for employees to go for NPS with a tax, uh, you know, uh, advantageous uh, um, route, really. I mean, which probably they are not having access to otherwise. But what is really worrying is the take up rate. So we still see, and especially with large technology companies, I talked about 11% on an average, but if you look at some of the technology companies, the take up rate is even lower than 5%. And obviously right now the average age of that company may be fairly low, but the longer you're delaying, you're effectively, the 10% contribution may not be enough to get you to the level that you want to get to. So I think, as I was mentioning during my presentation as well, some level of incentivization. Obviously, there's that whole communication and helping employees to understand this better. But after a point, I think younger employees would want to see some financial incentive that their employer may be giving them. And let's also not forget that we still live in that CTC structure, right? So you're asking an employee to give up something else to to contribute to NPS, because the entire pie is still 100 and you're asking the person to take something out of that 100. So as long as that CTC structure is going to be there, even a little bit of incentive from the employer might go a long way. Maybe a co-contribution, maybe a 2% contribution, maybe the first year's contribution, whatever it is. I mean, it can be designed in a innovative manner. But I think that first sort of push is what is going to be required to give this.
So, Sarkar, I fully understand from where you're coming, but in today's world where the corporates are still struggling to figure out the CTC, adding something on top of that CTC would definitely be
Yeah.
an interesting aspect to see. Coming on to Mr. Mono, I know you have covered this, but as I said, to re-emphasize how flexible this scheme is, some of the questions like, can we change the fund manager? Can we change the location? And can we withdraw in between uh, while, and what happens if a participant stops the contribution?
About flexibility, the fund manager can be changed once in a year. There are 7 fund managers. only one has to be selected. The selection for tier 1 may be different, tier 2 may be different. The same fund manager may not be selected for tier 2 also. So you have choices now in tier 1 also to change once that fund manager between the 7. And in tier 2 also you have the choice to change once in a year. Minimum contribution we have set 1,000 in a year. If that amount is not contributed, there is no penalty to it. Only thing is that what we do is that there is a freeze on changing your personal details. So if that amount is not contributed, but you can't change your personal details, you can't change your nomination, you can't change your address and all those things. But once you contribute towards that amount, after that thing, the freeze gets automatically deactivated. So there is no penalty of not contributing that 1,000 rupees also, if a person doesn't contribute that 1,000 rupees. But we say that, okay, the 1,000 rupees is linked to certain part of remuneration to the distributor also, in the sense that if a subscriber contributes 1,000 rupees to the account and he is attached to the distributor for more than 6 months, the distributor gets a commission of 50 rupees in a year. So that is only the differentiating factor for keeping that 1,000 rupees. There is no penalty for not paying that amount. And if the subscriber comes subsequently in the next year and pays that amount, it's fine. There's no, the entire amount is being credited to his pension account. And for changing locations, there is the address change is enough. In fact, the number always remains the same. And while changing the address, certain proof has to be given for that change of address. In fact, we have enabled Aadhaar authentication. If the Aadhaar address is changed, he can re-authenticate with the Aadhaar and the address gets changed to that account.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Manu. I'm mindful of the time. I think we have overshoot the time, but I'll take the liberty of asking one last question to Ms. Amdin. Whenever we talk about NPS, the first question people ask is, kitna bachta hai? Right? How do I change? What do I save in tax? Right? More than looking it as a pension, people look as a tax saving an option. If you are giving a free hand, and if you have to advise to the employees, corporates, so what is one big reason why people should move to, or people should choose NPS? Apart from the tax, which we get stuck so much. You're on mute.
Yeah, so tax advantage is there. Like we said, assuming you don't have any PF and PPF and all of that, you get 1,50,000 plus additionally only for NPS you get 50,000. So 50,000 additional NPS tax benefit is clearly there, and you immediately save around, if you're in the high tax bracket, around 16,000-17,000 rupees per year is a saving which you get. But tax should not be the only reason for making investment. And what you also need to know, one more very important thing on NPS is when you withdraw, you compare with a normal mutual fund. And mutual fund also, if you looked at it, it says long-term investment, if you do here, so it's beneficial. You put 2 lakh rupees 19 years back and you've got now 2 crore rupees. So many mutual funds are telling us that. Small cap funds and all that. So you put it for long term and you get a return which is good. What in case of mutual fund, when you withdraw, it is taxable. You have to pay capital gains on that. But if you're putting in NPS and you save for 30 years or 20 years or 35 years or 40 years, what you withdraw is not taxable. 100% is not taxable. So I think that's the most advantageous thing which is there of NPS, which people have not realized. Of course, PPF also is the same thing. If you put in PPF also, when you withdraw, it's not taxable. PF also, when you put in, when you withdraw after so many years, it's not taxable. But NPS also is not taxable, and it gives you the return also which is there. So that I think is the one bigger as compared to normal mutual funds or shares. If you compare that with NPS, NPS surely is much more advantageous in that sense. Other benefits that you look at it is you can manage your funds yourself. If the employer puts in superannuation fund, I don't have the authority to manage the funds. The fund is managed by the superannuation fund or the LIC policy or whatever it is. Here I am in the know of it. If I know things, I can manage my funds and I can choose fund managers. I think that's a very advantageous thing for an employee. He can decide, because sometimes the mutual funds also go bust. We've seen those cases happening. I can keep tracking my investments and seeing where to invest and how to change funds, which doesn't happen in all the cases. So that's, I think, a very advantageous position which is there in NPS. And the last thing I want to say is, if you can't track, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the time, even if you have the knowledge, just go in government securities. I think that's the best return that you're getting. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As we have over and above the time, I request all the participants, if you have any questions, please send across to us. We will ensure that these questions go to the panelists. There are two questions, though they were answered, but I would still like to bring because they were put on the questions. First question is, can I contribute to NPS after retirement?
Yes, I'm taking this question, Mr. Pandit. You can contribute after retirement also. And actually, looking at the longevity now, we have allowed people to join even up to the age of 70. And once they have joined NPS scheme, they can stay in the NPS scheme up to the age of 75. So even after retirement also you can join. And we actually enabled joining after 60 in the year 2017 only. More than 17,000 people have already come and joined post their retirement. So a lot of people are looking at it as they start their second innings maybe, or they still have a lot of corpus left with them. They think this is a good investment opportunity with a tax benefit, and it creates a corpus. So they are coming and joining. So you are welcome. Yes.
Great. Yeah. So another question, why there are so many retirement schemes like PF, PPF, superannuation, NPS? Why can't we make single retirement pension plan to make simple for people?
Actually, the one-line answer is that we ourselves have made our life very, very complicated, actually. And people want options, but the moment you give options, life becomes very, very complicated. Choosing the right product becomes very, very complicated. But that is how it was designed, because EPFO started way back in 1952. And thereafter, people thought of retirement, because even the pension part was not there. EPS will be knowing better than me. It came only much later in 1995, I believe.
Yeah.
So, and that also, the kind of pension it gives, it's not really a pension. It also has a finite limitation within which you can get it, and it's a very small amount that you get in EPFO. And superannuation funds, yes, another option was also given, that if you want superannuation fund, as Madam Kamdin told, these are mostly managed by insurance companies, and some are self-regulated, self-managed. So both kinds of superannuation funds are there. But currently, if you look from all the angles, as was discussed during the presentations, whether it is return, tax benefit, even withdrawal part, today from NPS, we allow 60% withdrawal free of tax at the point of retirement. Whereas in superannuation funds, it is only 33 and 1/3%, 1/3. So there also NPS stands out in a big, big way. So yes, people are sitting up and taking notice that this is a better scheme. 52 big central public sector enterprises, they have shifted their superannuation fund to NPS already.
Thank you, Mr. Supratim. So it was really an enriching webinar. It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be part of this enriching webinar on NPS. So NPS as is an excellent option and opportunity, which gives ease of opening, dual benefit, safety, tax benefit, and at the same time you can manage the fund. There couldn't be a better option for retirement plan, tax benefit, security, all put together. So I thank the panelists, especially convey my sincere thanks to Mr. Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman, PFRDA, for taking out his valuable time, being part of this webinar, and taking few questions and clarifying the doubts. I also take this opportunity to thank Ms. Kamdin, Mr. Sakar, and Mr. Mono. Thank you all. It was a real fun to be part of this exercise and to host you all as panelists, and eagerly look forward to have you again, once again on CII platform on this or some other topic. I also take this opportunity to thank Deepak, Chairman CII, Roshan, Deputy Director CII for Pune, and Bhagyashri, who's been behind the scene and putting things together. So a lot of efforts, a lot of coordination. So thank you, Bhagyashri. And last but not the least, all the participants. Without you, this program wouldn't have been so interesting and interacting. Thanks you all, and look forward to see you all. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our request will be, if you have any further questions from the participants, you can kindly forward it to us. We'll be too happy to answer those questions.
Absolutely, sir. We'll get back to you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.